We invented this 100-day mythology, and it's really much faster than the framers would ever want us to assess a presidency.
You are a mastermind when it comes to politics. I want us to be able to speak about the administration critically.
Yep. I do not think an opinion of Trump is going to change for 20 years. He's as fixed as a block of stone in everybody's mind.
I'd love to get your reaction to the tariffs.
I view the tariffs as a last-ditch effort to try and realign the world into good guys and bad guys. It's going to hurt. Was it Liberation Day? I don't know.
Single biggest victory from the Trump administration. What do you think it is?
Realigning with Israel and communicating clearly to the world, Iran, we're serious.
Wow, you really surprised me. Hugh, I wanted to sit with you as we approach 100 days to Donald Trump's presidency. And I specifically wanted to sit with you because I think you are a mastermind when it comes to politics. You have actually pulled my husband into politics. He used to listen to NPR and all kinds of other comedic radio, but he started listening to you and he got a bit serious, which is kind of a good thing.
Being a pathway drug to serious conversation about politics is a high compliment. I'm glad he found it funny enough and entertaining enough. NPR's production values are pretty close to the top of the business. So if he can move from NPR to me, that's a high compliment.
Yeah, well, truth is much better than any sort of production quality, right? Yeah,
I like to think so.
Yeah.
But you still have to be entertaining.
That's
NPR
true.
is very entertaining.
Yes, they are. Very, very entertaining. The other reason I wanted to sit with you and not with somebody from the administration is because I want us to be able to speak about the administration critically.
Yep.
Right? I mean, we've seen so much going on. The administration seems to be moving at the speed of light, and it's almost hard to reckon and understand half of what's going on. So what a great opportunity as we approach 100 days of Donald Trump's presidency to just sit here and review what we've been experiencing.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be the person to do the 100 days with you, Marissa, and for PragerU. There are lots of people with lots of different opinions. I'd encourage everyone. Remember, the 100 days look back is based on 1933. FDR passed 77 laws. He had super majorities in both houses of Congress. And we invented this 100-day mythology. And it's really much faster than the framers would ever want us to assess a presidency. We're supposed to be a slow-moving republic. This is a fast-moving new president in his second term, faster than any in my lifetime, but we're not supposed to be jumping jacks over 100 days. There's no 100 days in the Constitution or the Federalist Papers.
Well, that's fair because it's hard to know based on some of the policies how things are really going to play out.
It's going to take at least a year for some of these things. And the court proceedings are going to take a normal, fast court proceeding. I lawyered actively from 1983 until my retirement from the law in 2016. I still teach con law. The normal fast case is 6 months. And so the idea that we have one Supreme Court holding thus far is good. I mean, that's faster than I would have expected. But generally, 100-day assessments are done for audiences who love politics, but they're not real.
Okay, so let's start with day one.
Okay.
So on day one, Donald Trump signed 100 executive orders, some of them undoing the former President Biden's orders. And is this to be expected now that every president comes in and just cancels out some of the other president and rushes to just do a few more EOs just so that they can have their signatures or their policy in on day one? What do you make of that?
I thought it was great showmanship. There's never been a showman as equal as Donald Trump is to being a presence. He loves the big signature. He loves to hold this stuff up. He does it again and again and again because he knows it works. Now, can anyone else who gets into that office pull off a signing ceremony for 100 EOs? Probably not. At least I don't see anyone on the Democratic side right now. Forever is a long time. I do expect there to be a lot of, we're canceling this. And by we're canceling this, the birthright citizenship executive order will have been adjudicated by that point. Someone, if it's a Democrat, they'll cancel it. If it's a Republican, they'll modify it to fit whatever the Supreme Court says. So there will be always signing ceremonies because the appearance of activity is often more important than the actual activity. Most of those 100, I am unaware completely what they did. I'm aware of the birthright citizenship. I'm aware of some of the reversals on student loans, things like that. But I'm just generally not read in because I don't read EOs because EOs don't have the force of law.
Okay. So do you think there is any negative impact to signing so many EOs on day one? Is
Yes.
it like ping-ponging people around?
Expectation management. So you sign an executive order saying that birthright citizenship shall no longer be extended after a date certain. People get that headline, they react positively or negatively, and then nothing actually changes. It's my expectation that will have no impact, and that if anyone is attempted to be deported on the basis of it, the people who like the EO will be disappointed. So whenever you overpromise and underdeliver, I think there is a hit to your credibility. Trump's credibility is fixed, so he might not be that way. He might be beyond disappointment or expectation fulfillment. Most people aren't. Most people have to underpromise and overdeliver in order to raise the assessment of their quality. He is who he is. He's fixed. He's as fixed as a block of stone in everybody's mind as to whether he's good or bad. So it doesn't really matter what happens, but it does set a precedent. We will see lots more of that.
What do you mean by Trump's credibility being fixed? People who love him are going to love him, and people who love to hate him are going to hate him?
Yeah, I do not think an opinion of Trump is going to change for 20 years. And
wow.
It will only change after there's another person to compare him to other than Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. I have one pet theory, which is presidents either come out of the system that we have developed, which is you have held a statewide office and you've been in politics for a while, or you're outside of the system. And we've had outside of the system people with President Obama, President Trump, President Biden, who was the ultimate insider, but he was the first outside of the system because he was cognitively impaired, probably from day one, but certainly from year one. And then Donald Trump is back. Prior to that time, the only outside of the system person that we had in my lifetime was Richard Nixon, because he came back from defeat. And so he's an outside of the system guy who was a system guy who lost, and then the system says leave, and he butted the system. He came back. Everybody other than that has been a system person. Eventually, we will revert to the norm and get a system person, and then we'll see how the country reacts to a system person, because we've grown accustomed to presidents who entertain us. Mm-hmm. We're not supposed to have presidents who entertain us, but we do. And Obama entertained us, and Trump entertained us. Biden horrified us, but it's like watching a Freddy show, right? A slasher flick. And then Trump is the most entertaining president of my lifetime, and I worked for Ronald Reagan. So eventually we got to go back to dull. And that's what government is supposed to be.
Do you think the opinion of Trump being fixed is his superpower?
Yes, because he can drive people crazy, and that's a good thing. And he can also rally his base. They're ready to rally to him. Unlike pretty much anything I've seen, I've been following politics fairly closely since 1976. I worked on the Ford campaign in college, ran around Massachusetts trying to get Jerry Ford votes, which is a very difficult proposition, even in 1976, impossible now. So I've done every campaign, either as a staffer or as a member of the news media. And there's nobody like Trump, nobody remotely close like Trump. Most people didn't hate Jimmy Carter, even if they thought he was a terrible president. Mm. Most people didn't hate Ronald Reagan, even if they thought he was an actor who was way in over his head. Hatred and love is usually not associated with people outside of our familial and friendship circles. People love or hate Donald Trump.
Yes.
And that's unusual in my experience.
Yeah. What do you think about Donald Trump's appointees, the secretaries?
Very mixed bag. I say mixed bag because about some of them I have no opinion. I will have to wait and see. Brooke Rollins, I didn't know anything about. That's the Secretary of Agriculture. Turns out she's way smart, much smarter than I knew, that she had had domestic policy counsel, and she's great on radio. So I have an odd way of judging people. Are they verbal? Are they wonderful? I haven't had a chance to talk to Scott Bessent yet. I have talked to Secretary Rubio on the air. I have talked to Brooke Rollins, and I have talked to Doug Burgum. 3 extraordinarily smart people. And I take comfort in people who are smart. And by that, I mean, just what are you bringing to the table? I doubt we've had a cabinet secretary smarter than Doug Burgum. Stanford MBA, mortgaged his farm, venture capitalist, built his business up to many billions of dollars, sold it to Microsoft or somebody. Then he went and became governor of North Dakota. I had a 2.5-hour dinner with Doug Burgum, and I finally learned what carbon capture means. I finally learned what pipeline production means. Doug Burgum is an energy guy. We are so lucky to have him. So we've got this group of superstars, and we have the Secretary of Labor, I hope I pronounce her name correctly, DeReamer. She alarmed me. Robert Kennedy alarms me. Now, I understand while they're in the coalition, Robert Kennedy provided a significant boost to President Trump, and there's a certain amount of politics you have to play. We're going to award the Make America Healthy Again moms and the anti-COVID vax people, and we're going to do it with RFK Jr. I don't think he's smart. I think he's an ideological extremist. And so the good news is HHS can't be managed. It's just so vast and sprawling, and you can't really do anything. He's pro-choice in a way that is extreme. I'm a pro-life, traditional Reagan Republican, and therefore, will he mess that up, or will it just be opportunity cost? That's probably my problem. So Secretary Rubio is great. I am open to Secretary Hegseth being great. His DepSec, whose name is going to escape me right now, is very, very accomplished. His Undersecretary for Policy is Elbridge Colby, who hasn't been confirmed yet. Very smart guy, China specific. So if you look across all of his appointments, Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, I have to always say he's a good friend of mine. My son works on the NSC, so I have a conflict. I wanted to declare that for the audience, but I like Mike a lot. I think Susie Wiles is a genius, and I've talked to her exactly once for 2 minutes, and she turned me down flat. Because I wanted President Trump to do a weekly radio hit with me during the campaign. And she didn't say no. She said, well, that's an interesting idea. We'll talk about it. I never heard back. And so I've never met her. I don't know anything about her. I could recognize her. I think she's doing a fantastic job because she is letting Trump be Trump and managing only his calendar, not excluding people, just making sure he shows up where he's supposed to be and does what he wants to do. Chief of Staff is the most important job in the country not named president. National Security Advisor is the second most important job in the country not named president. And then Secretary of Defense only does what the president says. So that's the third most important job. I'm happy with those three. Pete Hegseth is young, but he's also a recruitment poster. And I think by a year in, we will have solved a real recruitment crisis in our military, and that will be good.
So you mentioned some of the outsiders that have been brought into the Trump administration. Do you think there's something positive about bringing in some outsiders, not the typical Republicans, not just for winning the campaign, but just even for coming up with new ideas and new solutions? I think that some people are looking for that. They're looking for something different because they've seen Republicans in office before and they haven't seen the change that they wanted to see. And so I think that there is a sentiment from the American people, let's try something different, which is really what Trump is about. Let's try something different. So do you think that has been the approach there?
Yes, and there are some that I approve of. Elon Musk is a genius. Elon Musk is up there with a handful of tech entrepreneurs that we have not seen the likes of since Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and I would put Peter Thiel in that. The whole PayPal mafia, they all kind of exploited the combination of need and technology that opened up briefly in the 90s, and they all rushed in. And some of them, like Elon Musk, have gone on to do, I mean, his tunneling company is itself mind-blowing, but to do Tesla and SpaceX and do DOGE, great. I think that's a great outsider because I've lived through the Peterson Commission and Simpson Bowles. I've lived through sequestration. We have never cut the size of government. We've never done it. Can it be done? Elon Musk may be the unique combination of energy and reputation and willingness to break the glass and pull the alarm. I'm happy about that. There are other outsiders like Jay Bhattacharya. Dr. Jay was absolutely right throughout COVID. He's being brought into NIH. I think he's been confirmed. I'm very glad that's the kind of outsider I like. I revert to Secretary Kennedy. Wait and see. He's never been on my radio show. I have grave concerns about some of his positions based upon having followed his career from a distance for a long time. I am not willing to declare one way or another yet that he's going to be a disaster. Because again, HHS is so very, very big, that it's really hard to move it. But Trump had an IOU, paid his IOU. So we'll see.
You mentioned Elon Musk. We have to talk about DOGE.
Yes.
So what is your opinion of DOGE?
Changing. Originally, I thought it was a advertising business bit. Vivek and Elon are going to give us some great ideas, and maybe we'll get them done in a couple of years. Then I realized it was real. Then I was afraid that it was Elon with a bunch of 19-year-old Cheeto-stained fingered geeks wearing the same T-shirt for 3 days in a row, bursting in on computer systems. And they're actually technologically trained and they're brilliant. Now I realize, after maybe the most significant bit of television I've seen in years that did not involve Donald Trump, was when Bret Baier sat down with Elon Musk and the 7 DOGE executives, each one of whom you could spend 2 hours with. It's only a 40-minute tape. People should watch it. And Bret did a fine job of getting out of their way. They oozed competence in the way that you kind of ooze competence, Marissa. The people either ooze competence or they don't. And each of his 7 people, I said, boy, I would turn my finances and family's future over to any of those 7 people. And I don't know their characters, of course, but they seem to me to be exactly who you would want if you were serious. They have a problem with the Constitution, which is much of the spending they want to change is statutory. We're gonna have a real constitutional collision of a sort we haven't had in my lifetime. I'm fascinated to see it, but I like DOGE now because now I realize they do have the caffeinated Red Bull drinking, backpack wearing kids, but they're working for serious middle-aged, top of their game executives who have done amazing things. So I'm now a DOGE convert. If Elon says they can get to $1 trillion, I'm skeptical, but I'm willing to be persuaded. They're not close to $1 trillion yet, but I am willing to be persuaded.
So one of the things about DOGE is that it's a temporary thing, right? And so are they consultants coming into the government, exposing DEI and massive expenditures, and then they just leave? How does this go from being this broadcasted, almost theatrical type of experience for those of us who are watching from the outside to something that is fully implemented and sustainable?
It's a great question because the answer is unknown. I spent 1983 to 1989 in the government. First year as a clerk to a federal circuit court judge on the D.C. Circuit, and then 5 years in the Reagan administration. I ended up being the acting director of the United States Office of Personnel Management. That's what happens if you stay to the end. They take the kids, and the kids are around, they get promoted. It's not because I was a great civil servant. I'd been the general counsel, and I'd been confirmed as the deputy director, and then the director left. So I'm running the federal government. Nothing is easy to do in the federal government. The Civil Service Reform Act of 1978 is among the most unwieldy of statutes. I don't want to bore our audience by explaining what the Merit Systems Protection Board is and the Office of Special Counsel and how many rights feds have and the bump rights and what a RIF is. It's really hard to change anything except grants. So they're going after grants, and that's the low-hanging fruit. One of the Elon deputies, said the National Endowment for Health has 27 CIOs. It's astonishing. I don't know how many chief information officers you have at PragerU. My guess is 1. And
we don't have one yet, but if somebody would like to make a tax-deductible donation, we might be able to hire.
There you go. And so you're managing to do it without one. 27 CIOs is nuts. And what these executives explain, the federal government is running off of 1980s technology at best. And so it's kind of scary. They can't do anything fast. You can't fire anyone. I know how long a RIF takes. So in the absence of a statutory authority, they're not going to be able to make stuff stick beyond the one-time spending. Our problem is not one-time spending. Our problem is entitlements. Our problem is interest on the 36 and rising $1 trillion debt. So they're going to make some changes around the margin, and they've launched a couple of constitutional challenges that would make it easier to get control of the government. But if the federal government is really going to change, the Congress is going to have to empower the president to do things against this massive $2.8 1 to 3 million federal employees. As Justice Gorsuch said in his new book, Overruled, came out in the summer, this is a justice of the Supreme Court, we don't know how many agencies we have. So it's astonishing that, okay, we ought to know how many agencies and how many people. We don't. We can't keep count. And so it's so big and so sprawling, it would require the empowerment of Congress for the executive to go and actually cut stuff.
Most of the people that work for government, I guess what Donald Trump would call the swamp, most people are Democrats. What are the chances that the Democrats would be okay with letting go of the power that they have by having government employees that are Democrats?
0. And right now we're in the trifecta. That's when a Republican president is aligned with the House and the Senate. And when you're in the trifecta, you can get 2, and some people argue 3 reconciliations through. The first reconciliation, which is moving its way through, its bumps ahead, is the tax extension of the Trump tax cuts and their refinement, tax on tips and a couple other things. Energy production relief, defense buildup of $150 billion, and the fourth part is the border wall, border security. That will eventually get through. Then there will be 2 more opportunities. If they are smart, they will focus on empowering the executive to take control of the executive branch, meaning that independent agencies are no longer, quote, independent. They can move fast, they can break things, they can change regulations. Can we get that through in the second or the third reconciliation? I think it's something worth swinging for. Not a lot of Americans are going to be excited about the authority to riff. Reduction in forces are very difficult to do. We ought to empower every cabinet secretary to reduce, but not to hire, up to 25% of their workforce, no questions asked, regardless of union status, regardless of anything, because not only most of them Democrats, all of them are Democrats. So of that 2.1 million, they need the federal government to be big and pulsing with money. They need it. It's their livelihoods on which they built. And I feel a lot of sympathy for people who are being riffed. But there are only 3,000 political appointees. Trump has at least begun the challenge to his ability to make that number 5,000 or 7,000. It's got to happen or the government will not be responsive. If Trump can't get that done, I don't know that we'll have the will to try it again.
Is that why Trump is working so fast, in your opinion? People think that he's reckless, but from what you describe, if he doesn't work very quickly, he's not going to be able to accomplish these things.
I am amused by the people who say he's reckless. He is determined to force through the courts challenges to the basic structure of the Constitution that were abandoned in the progressive era and then left far behind during the New Deal. And then Lyndon Johnson exacerbated it. So the 3 great expansions of the government occurs with Woodrow Wilson, FDR, and LBJ. That's 100 years of growth and 100 years of abusing the original design of the Constitution, which is small, limited, enumerated powers. To get that back, he's launched 1,000 ships. Even if 10 of them make it to the other side, we'll be in a much better position. I'm not expecting 500 of the 1,000 ships to get to the other side. But whatever he does, this court, I like to say to people, in the first term, he built the trampoline, the originalist majority, and now he's jumping on it. And he's jumping to see how high he can go. And it's an executive power versus legislative power versus administrative state power. And as I said, I've been teaching con law for so long. Never have I had to walk into class twice a week and say, well, there's another case of first impression. And a case of first impression is something we've never seen before. And we get 1 a week. And that's fabulous if you're teaching con law and you love it. It's by no means certain that it's going to be the revolution that FDR worked, because FDR worked with Congress. Again, they had super majorities. We get 3 laws at most, maybe 2. And there's already fighting over the first. So I really do wonder, ours is a system of divided power that is intended to make it very slow and hard to govern, to preserve our individual liberty. That's not the developer way. The developer way, everything about Donald Trump comes back to the fact he's a developer.
Yeah.
So for 20...
And his cabinet, and his advisors.
His advisors are also go fast. There's some government people like Secretary Rubio is a government intellectual. But Scott Bessent is from the private sector, and Doug Burgum is from the private sector. These people did what they want when they wanted to, and they fired people.
the
Well, that's
Howard
very
Lutnick, right?
frustrating.
Howard Lutnick. I mean, when people want to understand what is happening in the government, I say, look at Howard Lutnick. Think about a New York businessman that's advocating for you. That's what you're getting.
And a New York businessman who went through 9/11 and who had to make lots of difficult choices in the aftermath of that, some of which he was criticized for, sometimes wrongly, sometimes rightly. But he's a man of experience. He's another New Yorker. Mr. Witkoff, I don't know him. Another New York businessman of experience that the president is very confident in. We will see. There are things that are very difficult to change that have to change. Defense acquisition. He has brought in some remarkable talent to the Department of Defense. We can't continue to do. We have to be more like Israel and less like the United States since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Everything is slow. Everything is expensive. We're not building enough of anything. And hopefully this new team will change that. We have to change that. And if we don't, we will be outpaced by China within 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, China is just nimble and hungry and ambitious, and Americans have become fat and lazy. And the new administration is just not into that.
Nimble, hungry, ambitious, ruthless. So Xi Jinping is Mao. In between, we had the nice little guy, Deng Xiaoping, and we kind of bought that. Bide your time, hide your strength. We thought that they would become like us. They have not. Xi Jinping is a Leninist. He's a hardcore Leninist. He has ambitions the equal of Mao. He wants to be a significant figure in history. Ruthless is as ruthless does. He has absolute power. Donald Trump doesn't. If he wants Jimmy Lai, who is at this moment languishing in solitary confinement in a Hong Kong jail because he stood up for Hong Kong for the rights, he can be disappeared. He can disappear anyone. He disappears a lot of people. What's it like to be up against Stalin? We're up against Stalin now, but I think he's smarter than Stalin. Xi Jinping is a worthy adversary, but he is an adversary.
So, we talked about DOGE, which part of DOGE's entire goal was to cut down the national debt and our continuous expenditure, right? Elon Musk is trying to reach to 1 trillion in cutting. And on the other side of it, there is Howard Lutnick and his crew that are trying to work through tariffs to also decrease the national debt and also bring in manufacturing here. It's one of the, I would say, the biggest economic changes, at least of my lifetime, to see the tariff war between other countries, not just our adversaries, but also some of our friends. And I'd love to get your sense. I know you're not an economist, but I'd love to get your reaction to the tariffs. I think that as we talk about the tariffs, we have to talk about the national debt, because without understanding what our national debt looks like and what that means to Americans, we cannot understand why we would have to go through pain with tariffs. So our national debt now is $36 trillion.
Right.
I think we owe close to $1 trillion. Maybe it was like $760 billion to China and over $1 trillion to Japan and many other countries. What does that actually mean to an everyday American? What does it mean that we have this debt and foreign countries own the debt?
It means two things. It means that while we were the undisputed king of the world when it came to economies, we could carry the load of the rest of the world with our debt. And we could finance our lifestyle and our wealth with our debt. And we could, there have been 3 eras. The Marshall Plan era, after the devastation of World War II, George Marshall in 1947 said, we're going to rebuild the free world. And we put that debt on our back. Then, after the Soviet Union fell, we continued to put that debt on our back, and we paid for the social programs of Europe. We paid for a lot of development around the world. We paid for a lot of defense of Japan and Australia and others without even thinking about, because we were the world's reserve currency. And there was this phase of modern monetary policy, which believed that we could print as many dollars as you want and it would never matter because we're the reserve currency and that we can't have hyperinflation. I've been told by people smarter than me, like Brian Westbury, like David Bahnsen, good conservative economists, this is not sustainable. We can't print out enough money. Eventually something will arise, whether it's crypto, whether it's the currency that China uses, the yuan, whether it is the euro, a different reserve currency will come up. When that happens, then we no longer can sustain the quality of life because we're printing $2 trillion a year that we don't have. Eventually, the world will say, we don't think America is good for this, and they're not going to buy our debt anymore. When they don't buy our debt, the cost of selling it will go up. When the cost of selling it goes up, the cost of financing it goes up, and it's a bad spiral. It's a hyperinflation spiral. So I am worried about that. I view the tariffs as a last-ditch effort to try and realign the world into good guys and bad guys, white hats and black hats. We're in the new Cold War 2.0 with China. And the envelope in which I understand the tariffs is that we have to reshore critical industries before that conflict comes or in order to deter that conflict. And therefore, even though you're our friend, like Israel went to zero tariffs this week. They're the equal of any of our strategic allies. Absolutely. No matter who you are, Australia, Japan, you all have to treat us like the leader because we're all carrying the load. And you're now going to help us carry the load by at least lowering every barrier to trade. And you might have zero tariffs, but you might have a barrier to trade. Now I'm going to get into economics, so buyer beware. Europe has a value-added tax. I think it's 17%. Trump considers that to be a tariff barrier. I don't know. I have no idea. I know that I don't buy things in Europe because you pay 17% on everything, and it's a national sales tax, and I know it's expensive to bring it here. Is Trump right to say to the EU, we are going to charge the equivalent of your VAT tax on your and therefore reshore stuff? He's not comfortable having critical industries in the West or Western aligned countries. He wasn't happy that all the Chinese manufacturing in term one left and went to Vietnam because even though Vietnam doesn't like China, it's still not our friend. It's kind of West adjacent now, but it's still a communist country and they're not our friend. He wants manufacturing back in America. And he doesn't want manufacturing in Mexico because their rule of law is suspect. Canada can't do it. They don't have enough people. He wants manufacturing here of goods. We have a trade surplus in services. Services, I don't even know what it means sometimes. I know it's financial services and cruise ships and things like that, travel. We have a trade surplus in services. He wants to make things here. Now, he's believed that since before the Soviet Union fell. So his theory was not consonant with Ronald Reagan. I am willing to accept, we have now got to accept it's a new era and we'd better onshore everything. I don't want a war with China. I don't want my kids or my grandkids to be in a war with China. We have to deter that. The only way to deter that is to make everything we need here. We're in a country on which we can rely. One of those is Israel. Some of those are in NATO. Some of them are not in NATO, even though they're part of NATO. I like what he's doing. It is worth the big swing. It's going to hurt for 18 months. And the Senate and the Congress have to cut the taxes, or we're going to get doubly hurt. So we're really on the edge of a knife. We could go into a recession or a depression if the Congress does not bring the growth that is needed from the extension of the tax cut, or we could be in a booming era, and we won't know for 9 months.
There is a point I want to dive into further. You talked about history of tariffs, and I don't know how many Americans are aware of the fact that we have been tariffed when exporting American goods to other countries, basically because we wanted to help these other countries rebuild themselves for many, many years. And so when Donald Trump and the administration says America first, it is about no longer shouldering the economies of other countries, many of them that are not siding with us on very key issues.
I like to explain to people, especially parents, you carry your children when you go out when they're little. You carry them when they're infants. Sometimes you carry them when they're toddlers. Rarely will you pick them up when they're 5 or 6 or 7. They've got to walk on their own. Well, we have been carrying the world since the end of we carried it from 1947 to 1991 because we needed the world to face Stalin and then his successors when they were a menace to the world, the Warsaw Bloc. We did not put the kids down after the world grew up because we thought history was over. Francis Fukuyama's book, The End of History, we thought everyone would evolve to the American model or a similar model. It didn't happen, Marissa. It became a a world of three camps: China, the United States, and people who are taking the best of both worlds. We can't afford that anymore. We need people to walk with us, carry their burdens, not oblige us to carry their burdens. And the best example, Derek Van Orden is a congressman from Wisconsin, 1st District, I believe. Former Navy SEAL. You see him in a movie. He's the real deal. He's a killer. And he speaks bluntly, and he speaks directly. He represents dairy farmers in Wisconsin. They cannot sell their products in Canada. That's the easiest thing to understand. Why not? Because there are barriers. Canadian farmers don't want our dairy products, our cheese, our egg. They don't. Well, that's not free trade. That's an exception to free trade, and it's time to end that. Canadian farmers this is a pretend line on the map, Wisconsin and Canada. Let's have a free trade agreement. And I mean a real free trade agreement. We need their oil, by the way. We will benefit from that. We will buy their oil as well. But right now, it's not a free trade world. We've evolved, and now we have to expedite the return to two camps, because there are two camps, and we can't afford, like we did in the Marshall Plan era, to be World War II era America. We're not that big. We're big, biggest economy in the world. We can carry a lot of the weight. We can't carry everything that we used to. We have to put the dollars down.
Right. And is it fair? Is it fair for America to pay 241% when selling dairy in Canada? Is
Yes.
that fair?
Yeah, and
Right? That's, I think, the question. Okay, but many people would say, well, Hugh, that's fine. It is unfair, and we need to unwind, and we can't carry the entire world's economy and subsidize other countries anymore. But is this not too abrupt? Just starting right away off the bat, putting these tariffs on and expecting Americans who are running businesses and building businesses and trying to survive here and make ends meet pay so much more at, a week's notice, 2 weeks' notice.
the headline in the Financial Times, and I think it's the best newspaper in the world. I only subscribe to two, Wall Street Journal and Financial Times. The headline yesterday was, countries rush to make deals with Trump, offering trade concessions, purchases of American goods, or decoupling from China. Countries are lining up to make deals with us. I remind everyone, Donald Trump is and remains a developer. I was a lawyer for developers, the biggest ones that you've ever heard of, all the big ones in California for 27 years. In the western states, as far away as Palau and Hawaii, they all are the same. They come in two varieties, publicly held companies and those that are privately held. Trump's a privately held developer, but they all do the same thing. They get a big piece of land and they go into the entitlement agency, county, city, state. I want to build 10 units per acre. And they ask for 10 units per acre. They're never going to get 10 units per acre. And then the guys at the desk say, you're not going to get, let's get down to 8, and then we'll take it to the planning commission. Then you go to the planning commission. They say, well, we want some more parks. And all of a sudden you're at 5. Then you go to the city council, and the city council says, we want another fire station and an elementary school. So you're down to 4, and you're doing a bond in order to pay for some street widening that we need. It's all a negotiation until it's done. Donald Trump kicked off 80 development projects on Wednesday. That was Liberation Day. Doors open, let's haggle. And he's going to haggle. Is it going to work? China hit us with a huge reciprocal tariff. That's the only one I don't care about. I don't want to trade with China. God bless China. May they be free again. We didn't trade with Russia or the Soviet Union. We do not want them to be stronger. So they're in a trade war with us. Fine. They were in a trade war with the Soviet Union for however long, 1947 to 1991. We're in a trade war with China. Fine. I don't want to be in a trade war with Japan. On the other hand, let's find out what reality is. There are some extremists who believe that we ought to be subsidized by these countries that we have subsidized for all these years. That's not me. I just want to get to a normal, level playing field where we're all on one team. We recognize that. And I'll give you one example. Last time I was in Israel, Dr. Oren's a friend of mine, Michael Oren, and we were talking about, are you going to buy Huawei? Don't buy Huawei. Huawei is made in China. It's got China bugs in it. Nobody wants it. Israel was talking with China back then, and now they're not. Now they're on our team. After the horrors of 10/7, they made a choice, and they're on our team now. And that choice has to be made everywhere in the United States, in the world, that they're not our friend, they're our enemy, they're good guys, they're bad guys, and we want to be with the good guys.
So basically, the countries need to choose.
Yes.
They need to choose who their friends are. So Israel chose the United States. It sounds like Vietnam. The leader of the Communist Party of Vietnam called Donald Trump and said, let's make a deal. And so the idea is he puts these tariffs on. He basically says, call me, I'm golfing. That's the typical, negotiator move and say, let's have a conversation and we either resolve it or we don't. But
Vietnam is interesting because I've only been to Vietnam once. I went for a couple of weeks. And you hear a lot about our war with Vietnam, and they call it their independence war. And they make sure you know that they beat us again and again and again. But they also make sure you know that we've had one war with the United States and 25 wars with China. And so we really don't like China. And the most recent war they had is not our war. China invaded Vietnam, and Vietnam kicked their butts, and China retreated. So they are very much on our team. I wouldn't trust them. They're communists. But if they want to be on our team, good. They don't want that manufacturing that left China that went into Vietnam to leave Vietnam and come to the United States. There's a happy medium in there. We'll figure it out. But I'm from Warren, Ohio. Everyone who's heard me on any of my radio shows or the times I've sat down with Dennis know this. Warren had 60,000 people when I was born in 1956. They were the steel production capital of the world, along with Pittsburgh and Detroit. They had 4, maybe 3 significant car facilities, including Lordstown. They are now a city of 40,000 from 1964 to now. And all the steel mills, save one, are closed. There is no automobile production. There was an attempt to start an EV production, failed. Their only hospital that was not a religiously based hospital closed. It's a disaster. That's not a unique story. You can tell that about Flint. You can tell about Middleton. And Donald Trump understands, and Trumbull County, where I'm from, was reliably blue, reliably Democrat. And by reliably Democrat, I mean 60% plus. That's where Cuyahoga County is the deepest blue. That's Cleveland. But ours is the next, Youngstown, Ohio. UAW, United Steelworkers, you name it, union people. Reliably Democrat. It is now deep red for Trump. Deep, deep red for Trump. A lot of that are older people, but are also a lot of that are the people who stayed and realized we got to get something back here. And we got water and electricity and an industrial plant. People have got to come and build. Now they're building outside of Columbus, Intel. They're building a big power plant in Pennsylvania across the border. It's the same difference to me. The borders don't matter. But the industrial Midwest is where people should be going, provided that the tax structure is correct. And Ohio's got its tax structure right. And I'm optimistic. It might take 2 or 3 years, but it's not going to take as long as we think. A lot of these tilt-up manufacturing things don't take as long as we think.
It's so interesting that you bring up the population that has been very supportive of Trump, because when you're hearing about the tariffs and people who are very upset about the tariffs, they're saying, well, how are poor people going to be able to afford their clothing, their cars, their shoes? Everything's going to go up by 30%. Everybody, the Angelinos, they're very concerned about all the, low-income people. But the way you put it is, actually they're going to get jobs again.
Yeah, it's not true. Low-income people are going to use substitution to overcome tariff impact. For example, we have no bananas in the United States. If you love bananas, you're going to pay more for bananas because the banana producing countries all got hit with tariffs. Mm-hmm. And coffee. I drink coffee like I drink water. We don't make that here. Coffee comes from somewhere else. Our coffee cost is going to go up. But you don't have to go to Starbucks. You can go to Costco and get whatever that brand is, Kirkland, and you can drop your cost. But if you are a high-end consumer, you're going to pay. That doesn't mean you're going to be less rich. It's going to mean you're going to have less abundance in your life. Mm. And you might keep your car 2 years instead of 1. And you might not shop at Trader Joe's and instead go to Costco. There isn't actually going to be a significant economic impact except on those industries that rely on exports. Our farmers are in danger of getting screwed because we export a lot of farm products to the world. Last time around, Trump made good, just wrote him checks. We may have to do that. There are some industries that will get screwed. But for the average American, they won't notice it, with one exception, which is home buyers. The cost of a home is going to go up because a lot of a home is imported, and luxury car buyers for whom substitutionary replacement is not possible. Tesla is pretty much an American car. Still a quarter of it's made outside the United States. Is it going to raise prices? I think so. Is a BMW going to go up? Well, we make some in South Carolina, but do we make them all? No, we import some BMW. Some people will pay. I'm not going to worry about them. The people who lost are people who are market traders. Investors didn't lose a dime if they didn't trade anything in this week of tariff shocks, and it might go on for a few weeks. It's not 2008. There's not a collapse in the economy. It's not liquidity. It's not the dot-com bubble. All those companies are still out there. It isn't even the Nixon shock. All it was traders didn't know what to do, and so they dropped 20% of the market value.
You don't think the stock market, Wall Street, is really going to just drive us into a Great Depression?
I do not. I believe 2008 is an excellent example, as was the COVID shutdown. The American economy periodically resets, and I think it's reset 5 times in my adult life, beginning in 1987 with Black Friday. And those resets are really ugly if you're caught in a long position, or you're buying puts and sells, or you're an active trader. You can get really screwed, but that's not most Americans. I saw Besant saying that half Americans don't own any equities at all. They don't care what happened in the market. 10% of Americans own, I think, something like 90% of equities. They got hurt. Their 401ks got hurt. Don't panic. Don't sell. Hang on. The new home buyer is both helped and hurt. The new home is going to be more expensive to produce because some things are important, but the cost of buying that house has already gone down. The longtime mortgage broker advertised on my radio show told me yesterday he's doing mortgages in the 5s. So that's the first time we've been in the 5s in 5 years. And I expect it because of the tariffs and the shock. Money flows in the United States. They go into treasuries. Cost of treasury goes up. The interest rate goes down. People can get a 30-year fix. They might be winners in the end. We won't. It will work itself out. And then the last time Trump did this, the pre-COVID economy was the strongest economy in my life. I'm 69 years old. The 2019 into February of 2020 economy was as cooking as America could cook with gas. He's doing it again. It will take 2 to 3 years, especially on the deregulation side. Joe Biden was an awful president, largely because he wasn't there, cognitively impaired. And the people he hired were ideologues, not interested in anybody. And they did remarkably inflationary things. People really did get hurt. You couldn't substitute a good. When everything went up 7 to 10%, there's no substituting of goods. This allows people to substitute goods. So I'm not really worried. Now, if you are a steel importer, you're mad at me. I understand. I hear you, because the cost of steel is going up. And you say, well, steel's in everything. Yeah, it is, but it's not the bottom line product. People are pretty smart, and we might start making steel in the United States again. That would be a good thing.
When you bring up the people who are mad at you for saying that we're going to have to experience some pain, maybe for 18 months, the first thing that comes to my mind is that I'm willing to experience pain for my country. And I think this is something that is very unique, that Americans are not willing to really experience pain for their country. You see around the world, I lived in Israel for a few years, people serve in the military, they lose their children in defending the country. Many European countries where people are forced to serve in the military and you have to sacrifice for your country. And I think one of the things that people need to understand living here as Americans is that you don't get to be selfish, right? And you have to think about the greater good for what are your children going to inherit. And so if we have to experience pain for a year or more, what does that mean? What does that mean in the long term, right? And whether it's worth it or not. And I think that when people don't understand that we are effectively at war, We're effectively at war against China. And it's not just China, because China is buying ports in different places around the world and investing in infrastructure in places around the world. So even if you slap tariffs on China, but you're allowing them to use their ports in Cambodia, and there's no consequence for that, what does that mean for this new world war that we're dealing with? Like, you think about war, you think about bullets and tanks, but war in the future is not going to be bullets and tanks necessarily. It's going to be AI, and it's going to be the economy. And what sends countries into war if not the economy? And so I actually think if we have to suffer with a 30%, let's say, increase in whatever goods that we're importing here, it is better than sending our kids into war. It is better than bullets and tanks and deaths. If we can prevent a war by negotiating on a stronger economy and actually getting ahead of that race and being stronger economically, is it not worth it? Maybe it is worth it. I guess we'll wait and see, right?
I am a person who's very convinced it's worth it. Now, I'm a civilian. Want to make that clear. My son-in-law served in the United States Navy for 24 years. My daughter is a naval spouse. My grandkids move around the world. They sacrifice every day. My son served 9 years in the Navy. He sacrificed every day. He was attacked when he was in Iraq by the Iranians. We're in a war. China is the head of the octopus, but Iran's part of that. Russia's part of that. North Korea's part of that. Venezuela's part of that. Cuba's part of that. They have bad guys, and we can't ignore that. And the equal of any of our allies is Israel. And I'm glad you brought them up as a country that they sacrifice extraordinarily. Not only universal service, the cost of housing in Israel is crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
The cost of everything in Israel is crazy.
And it's because national defense is expensive.
Yeah.
And we were used in 1991. We declared a peace dividend, which wasn't real. We thought we would let Bill Clinton, I'm not blaming him because Republicans were in favor of it, China into the WTO, and that they would act like a Westerner. They didn't. They stole everything. They are looting our universities of brain power right now. There are 250,000 Chinese nationals in our best universities. I don't want to throw them out. I just want to be aware that some of them are spies and that they steal everything, and that we are in a race on the AI side and the supercomputing side and space. It's the third leg of the new race. And under the water, I suppose, is the fourth. We've got to win that in order to deter the kind of costs that we don't want to pay again, either a Great Depression or World War II, or even anything like Vietnam. We don't want to pay those costs again. So everybody around the world, pick up your burden. In the United States, getting people to pick up their burden is going to be a lift for us. And it's going to be great on the other side. Was it Liberation Day? I don't know. Trump oversells everything because developers oversell everything. I'm willing to wait and see, because I saw 4 years of Biden. And that was actually 4 years of the Democratic Party. They wasn't running anything. The Biden Regency, we don't know who was running it. The first book out is just so alarming. We don't know who was running it, but I think no one was running it. And so I think everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And what was right in some people's eyes with DEI. Trump has killed DEI dead. Hooray for Trump. Best thing he's done. He's rooted it up. It's out. It was supposed to have been out 2 years ago after the Supreme Court finally said, no, university, you can't do that. He's rooting out anti-Semitism. He's rooting out indifference. People are no longer indifferent to what the government is doing. And people are paying attention. And some of them are really mad. And Trump's approval rating has dropped down into the mid-40s rapidly, because people hate when their 401ks go down.
Yeah.
And they'll be happy when they go back up. Buyer's remorse. It's real, but it's also Reagan. I was in the Reagan administration. He got wiped out in 1982. So, okay, he gets elected in 1980 in a landslide. He gets wiped out in 1982 because Volcker is ratcheting up the interest rates to kill inflation. And then by 1984, Reagan wins a landslide. Now, Trump's not running again, but I assume the vice president is, and other MAGA or MAGA adjacent figures will arrive within the Republican Party, and they will either benefit or pay the price of that. But it's worth a shot, because what we're doing right now is not sustainable.
Do you think what happened in Wisconsin is a sign of buyer's remorse for Donald Trump's election, or is it just local Republican complacency?
Two parts. Wisconsin's a burnt over district, meaning they've had like an election a year that mattered for 10 years, and it's an exhausted population, and they don't much care about the Supreme Court. People have been flying that, oh, the Supreme Court's going to become a Democrat Supreme Court, and maybe it will, maybe it won't. But you know what? We have a U.S. Supreme Court, and if they do anything really crazy on redistricting, they can step in. I think it's very tough to get people motivated on a special election for the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. Republicans won both open seats in Florida by really healthy margins, off-year special election margins. That told me the Republican Party's fine. Red is red. Blue is still blue. Nothing has changed. We should lose. Title charts are a thing. I've learned about that because I spend some time in Maine every year. And the tide should go out on the Republicans in 2026. We should lose the House. We ought to keep the Senate. If they lose the Senate in 2026, Trump overshot. If they hold the House, he hit the mark exactly. But we know American politics have tides. Tide came in for Trump. It's going to go out. It's going to come back in for whoever succeeds Trump. I'm not worried at all.
How is Donald Trump doing on the border? And
there's his big win.
And barely talked about, by the way. It personally is one of the most important things to me because I live in California.
It's astonishing on so many levels. I don't know what the number that came in is, whether 15 or 20 million. I do know that the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security put out a report last week that Senator Grassley brought my attention to. I went and read it. Inspector General reports are the worst thing to read ever. They're written so that they cannot be understood. They're boring. Bottom line, that we know of 448,000 unaccompanied minors. So let the audience think about that. 448,000 children. Some of them were 17, but most of them weren't. Some of them were 6. Came across the border in those 4 years that we know about. Of those 448,000, we waved in 223,000 and we let them go to somebody, and we didn't keep track of them. 31,000, we got an address. We know where they are, but we haven't been in touch with them. We haven't given them a date to appear or prove anything. 48,000, we gave a notice to appear, and we know where they allegedly went, and they didn't appear. And 31,000, we have no idea where they went. Well, this is a predatory country full of very bad people who treat children horribly, and will be happy to traffic them and happy to make them work 18-hour days, because child labor is actually a thing around the world. Only Western countries don't let it happen. They're working before school, before they go to school, if they get to go to school, and some of them are in hell. And we had no idea. The border is now closed. It's almost nobody. And that's all messaging that Donald Trump and the Marines and the Border Patrol, no more claiming asylum. You can do asylum in Mexico, which is the first safe country under the rules. Trump stopped it in 2 weeks. It proves that those 4 years were a choice. Why did they make that choice? I'm not a conspiracy theory. I don't believe in Cloward Piven. I've never believed. But what the effect of it was to overwhelm our country's ability to absorb immigrants. And when we overcome that, I don't know. That's a lot of people. Now, our birth rate's down to 1.9. My hope is that most of those 15 to 20 million are like ordinary immigrants. They want a job. They'll do any job. They'll do 3 jobs. They're going to be like your grandparents, my grandparents. My great-grandfather came over with nothing in 1868 and worked in the mines and bought a farm, and his son went to law school, and my dad went to law school. My mom's family was not that fortunate, but he was a fireman, so he made his way. But recent immigrants tend to work. They also tend to be very patriotic. So my guess is that bulge, when we regularize them, whether legally or illegally, meaning that they absorb into the community, we're going to spend most of Trump's effort getting rid of the bad guys. I'm going to try and find the kids, and we're not going to open that border up until we absorb the bulge. I'm an optimist. What he's done there is nothing short of amazing. And if anyone had told you, if a Democrat had said Donald Trump won't be able to shut the border down, I wouldn't have been surprised. If a Republican had said he'll be able to cut it in half, I said, yeah, that's about right. To almost zero, it's astonishing. And it means that everything that happened at the border was a choice. And it was a choice by the Democrats.
Do you think the deportations are constitutional?
No. I teach constitutional law. Notice an appearance is kind of fixed in the system. I know Secretary Rubio's argument. He made it to me, which is the combination of Article 2 power, which is president as commander-in-chief, and the Alien Enemies Act of 1878, combined to allow the president to send anyone with a green card who's deemed a national security threat out. I believe that power exists. I do think they get one hearing somewhere. Those people didn't get a hearing. And so I think we're going to find that that's not going to start out. But I also think Trump wanted to test the ultimate. He wanted to go to the high. What can I do? When can I do it? Don't go halfway, go full way. And then he's a developer. And we're going to find out that you have to give them a short hearing. And then we'll use that, moving people out.
Donald Trump on world affairs. What's your evaluation? We have Russia, Ukraine. We talked a lot about China. So let's talk about Russia, Ukraine, and Iran, Israel.
Can I go in reverse order? Before we're done taping, the United States might have struck Iran. We have a half dozen B-2s at Diego Garcia. We have 2 carrier groups within striking distance of Iran that are beating up on the Houthis. We have transferred a great deal of anti-ballistic missile defense systems to Bahrain and other Sunni-friendly states. Israel's on alert. We even sent a squadron of A-10s, which make no sense to me, given what I understand. So we are preparing to pound Iran's nuclear sites and maybe their oil infrastructure. Donald Trump gave him a choice. I listened to what he said. We do this the easy way. We do this the hard way. Easy way is open up your sites, denuclearize, go the way of Libya, South Africa, and Ukraine, and we don't have to bomb you. If you try and get to breakout, nuclear weapon, we will destroy that. And we'll do it in concert with Israel, maybe UK, but we can do it. And those B-2s are as deadly. We can't keep them there. They can't stay at Diego Garcia. They're strategic assets of the United States. We can't leave them in one place. And it costs a lot to deploy a carrier group, very expensive. We're coiled. Prime Minister Netanyahu's coming here this week. President announced that on Air Force One 2 days ago. I think we're going to work very, very closely with Israel. And what the book Fight revealed, a lot of gap developed between Israel and the United States in the Biden years, very dangerous gaps. Anti-Israel people were involved. There were Iranian suspected aligned people in the government. We were not acting like Israel's friend. We were denying a lot more than 2,000-pound bombs. We were denying a lot more than infantry rifles that could be given to the most radical of the settlers. We were denying a lot of ordnance, and we were putting a lot of pressure on Israel. That's over. We're with them. And they're with the alliance of moderate Sunni states, the responsible parties in Lebanon. The Middle East is going to realign in a way. I don't know that 10/7 is worth the price of anything, but the people who died in 10/7 set off a revolution in the Middle East, which is going to be enduring, and I think for many, many generations. So he's done great on Israel. There hasn't been a president this important to Israel since Richard Nixon in the Yom Kippur War.
I want to ask you about Israel because the comments will be, why is Israel drawing the United States into a war against Iran? What is your answer to that? Should Israel expect support from the United States, or why?
Yes, because Israel is defending us against our number 2 enemy, which is Iran. The people who run Iran have been killing Americans since 1979. They've killed them most recently on the battlefields of Iraq. Last year, the Biden presidency in Jordan. They run the militias. I don't buy the proxy stuff. They're running the Houthis. They're running Hezbollah. They ran Hamas. They killed a bunch of Americans on 10/7, as well as Israelis, as well as other people from around the world. Iran is the worst state in the world because they're religious fanatics, and it's a suicide cult. Douglas Murray has a new book out called Democracies and Death Cults. I'll talk with Douglas Murray on Monday on my program, and I'm just disturbed that people don't see. The first line of the book is, every so often the flare goes up, and you know exactly where everybody stands. Well, Israel stands with us. We stand with Israel. A couple of our allies stand with Israel. And you know who wasn't standing with Israel? Everybody else. And so Biden wasn't standing with Israel. I am very happy that we have a strategic partner that's a nuclear power, innovative, smart. They produce stuff we need. They're leading a lot of the defense sectors. They're leading in AI. We want to be friends with Israel. The country we want to be friends with next is India. And NATO, maybe. A lot of NATO is sclerotic, caught up in EU-induced paralysis, and it's just not going to get better. I would like our allies to become more like Israel. Russia, Ukraine. It is a fact that Ukraine cannot defeat Russia. I've said that from the beginning of the war, and I'm a big supporter of Ukraine. Send them everything they want. It's not unlike the 1980s with Reagan supplying the Mujahideen with weaponry with which to kill Russians, Soviets at the time. So we like Ukraine. It's a free country. It's not historically part of Russia. It was absorbed, but there is the eastern part of Russia and Crimea, which was historically part of Russia. There's a deal to be had here. Trump has proven to me he's not Putin's guy again. He put the hammer down on Zelensky, brought Zelensky to the table. It was ugly, unfortunate. And now Putin is screwing Trump. Don't screw Trump. It's not a good choice. I expect the weapons to continue to go to Ukraine. Unless Putin sits down, it is pretty awful. Putin is a war criminal. He's an evil man. They've stolen thousands of children. But Ukraine cannot beat Russia. The best that can be hoped for is an acceptable peace that allows Ukraine to remain an independent and free state with elections on a relatively free market, European Union bound path, but not a member of NATO.
We don't have a lot more time, but I want to move on to some of your specialty because you're an attorney. And just broadly, are there any legal issues that are happening in the United States right now, a move that worries you when it comes to law in America?
Yes. The number of nationwide injunctions, also called universal injunctions, that have issued from district courts is double the historic high, which was in the first Trump term. We used to never get nationwide injunctions. They became a thing in the first Trump term when ideological district court judges stepped in to enjoin national programs and try and micromanage the executive branch. Then Biden picked up on them, and some conservative district court judges used them. So it's a bipartisan foul. District courts ought not to issue nationwide injunctions. They ought to issue orders that bind the parties before that court. The cases and controversies rule. And I am hoping that the Supreme Court will find the opportunity in this current wave of cases heading their way to say, hey, district courts, knock it off with a nationwide injunction. We have circuit courts. We have a Supreme Court. We can't develop splits in the circuit from which we get the benefit of the federal court system. So that's very alarming. District court judges are not supposed to run the United States. I also am hopeful that the appointment power is clarified. There are a couple of decisions that took too much power away from the president, so I'm hoping the court remedies that. And then there's lots of stuff going on. It's really interesting.
I mean, just recently with the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah, they clawed back a district court injunction that required the Trump administration to pay $65 million in grants. And district court judge said, pay it. And the Supreme Court yesterday said, no, you don't have to pay that. And it was 5-4. The chief, being an institutionalist, went with the 4, but I don't think that's predictive of the future. They're getting back to basic first principle issues, and it's long overdue. We have to rebalance the system, and we have to force Congress to do their job. And the courts already, before Trump got there, in the Loper-Bright case, which was about overturning Chevron. Before that, there was another case called the Major Questions Doctrine case. They're doing good things. I'm very hopeful about the trajectory of the court. Faster, please.
Do you think the dismantling of the Department of Education is legally possible?
Not yet.
Reagan tried to do it and couldn't get away with it.
And so I expect that injunction to stand. There's a statute there. We are a republic of laws. The law stood up the Department of Education. You got to repeal the law. Now, it doesn't mean you can't skinny it down, take back their grants, hobble their people. It's sort of like my advice to Columbia and Harvard. You've got big endowments. Send everybody home. We're not firing anyone. We're just starting over. The university is diseased. We're going to use the equivalent of chemo, and you're all leaving. We might rehire some of you. We're not going to fire any of you. We got lots of money. We're going to pay you all, but we're starting over because obviously our faculties are nuts. Ideological descent of the universities into chaos is unfortunate, and they can do radical therapy. Federal government can't.
You went to Harvard. Would you send your kids to Harvard again?
No. And that could change. Pretty conclusive no. My first cousin, once removed, is at another Ivy. I worry that she will lose fundamentally sound bearing. Her father, too, career Navy, mother, career medical professional. very solid, grounded kid. I just worry that the environments into which young people are going are fundamentally destructive of core values because it's relentless. And I tell people the story of my 45th reunion at Harvard last summer. It was the craziest thing I've ever been to. They wouldn't let Obama appointees speak at the reunion because it was being run by the alumni office, which is run by kids who are ideological extremists in the area of woke. The best thing Donald Trump did is the order on DEI, and it's constitutional because it implements the Supreme Court's decision on DEI.
Wow.
It is unconstitutional to count by race, gender, ethnicity, country of origin, religion. It's just unconstitutional. We have to rip all that out, and Trump is willing to do it. Department of Education will be left standing at the end of the day. They're just going to be doing a lot less.
Single biggest victory from the Trump administration, almost 100 days. What do you think it is?
Realigning with Israel and communicating clearly to the world they are the equal of any of our strategic allies. Iran, we're serious. That's the most important thing. It's a message, by the way, to China and to Russia. It's a message to the world. We are not going to put up with this. And what this is the export of terrorism and the wanton massacre of innocent people. So repairing that relationship, which is the most important alliance in the world, was vital, and he's done it. Prime Minister is coming. I know he's very controversial in Israel. I don't get involved in domestic politics of other countries. I'm just glad to see him back twice in the first 100 days. That's very unusual in American history.
Wow, you really surprised me. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good luck. Keep spreading the word. I think it's a vitally necessary platform for other people to hear what comes out of PragerU. Thank you for having me, Marissa.
Appreciate it. Thank you.